I think it's almost like they catechize us with Marvel movies, these superhero Marvel movies about wormholes, and every one of those movies, they catechize the public about the reality of quantum entanglement, wormholes, these things that go nowhere, multiple
Hmm.
dimensions, multiple realities, black holes, and all these exotic things that are just BS. I'm David Gornoski, and we're back for another program with our friend James Kourtides, host of the Rooster's Crow podcast. How you doing, James?
Well, David, good to see you, my brother. Good to see you, my
Yeah.
fellow Floridian.
Yeah. How are things going on down in the Tampa Bay area?
They're good, man. Status quo. Things are good. Family's good. Work's good. Doing sports with the kids, doing some reading, and just trying to navigate these things. As we see this continued craziness coming through our screens. I mean, we anticipated this, right? We said 2024 is going to be an intense year, and you know what? It hasn't been, believe it or not, as crazy. But maybe they're preparing for that here this summer.
Yeah. Well, we've had the big news that, the first convicted felon, the first criminally convicted former president of the United States, Donald John Trump. That's the big story that a lot of people are chattering about and media today. What does this mean? Meanwhile, he's raised tremendous amounts of money off the back of this story, uh, a record haul that has been pouring in since the news of his criminal conviction in the New York City trial. And it's funny that, I think this is to be expected. I've predicted this all along, that the more he's prosecuted and persecuted, the more he will gain attention, he'll gain support.
Doesn't that give you pause? Doesn't it give you pause for a second to be like, okay, so they know that they've seen it happen, right? And they're continuing to do it. And they knew he would get records amount of donations, 34 million in 10 hours. They knew it would increase his stature and the information and everything. It's like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Like people are just throwing their money at this guy, 34 million, millions of dollars. The country's going to crap, right? We got chronic diseases, all these issues, and everybody's focused on this sham trial. Whether you think it's a sham trial, which it obviously is, or you think he's getting his comeuppance, something smell right. Something's not right. Now, I saw Trump, advocating for him to go to jail, kind of. He's like, my lawyers are telling me, not to go to jail. And then the question is this judge who has discretion going to send him to jail for like 2 months or whatnot? And I'm like, what's going on here? There's no way. Are they that incompetent that they don't know that it's going to cause his status to increase? Or are they just going Hail Mary? We don't care if his status increases. And then it makes me think, well, the division that this is causing, like my text threads with family and friends and cousins, it just exploded. I told you he was a crook. This is like just going crazy. And I have a buddy that I work with showed me the same exact situation happening on his text thread. He's got one brother who's a big, anti-Trump guy, and he shows me these text messages with the family. He says, "I disown you. You guys don't love me because of this, like crazy." So I'm like, and I'm telling him, like, you got to be the one to stop this, like, but myself included, I buy into it too. So it's like it seems like the division and the division between the people is the point, you
Yeah.
know, and that's happening and that's increasing. Some of the mindset, I'm, more on the paranoid side. I was watching Patrick, but David has this good thing. On the one shoulder you have the future looks bright, positive kind of situation. On the other, just like you got to be paranoid. I think you got to thread both of those lines. But what do you think? What is the end game here? Do you think maybe Trump is in cahoots? He just approved, ostensibly approved this 100 billion package to Ukraine, and the Republicans, the rhinos, were praising him for that recently, which is not a MAGA thing to do, which gave me a little bit of pause. What do you think is going on here?
I think the uniparty establishment, the oligarchs that run both parties, and the media and the banking system and everything that is built on the foundational power of our country. I think that they're making a negotiation with Trump behind the scenes right now with all these indictments. This is akin to taking Trump and kind of running him right next to the buzzsaw, and saying, okay, we're going to make our terms very clear to you. Obviously, you've created a hornet's nest of support outside of our carefully crafted, narrative dialectic. You've created people who are vehemently supporting you in your desire to reduce globalism, to reduce wars, to reduce endless trade deals, and to basically go against the agreed upon direction for both wings of the establishment. And so you've irritated us too much in your off the script narrative that the people have bought into. So here's how it's going to work. We'll give you, Don, the chance to win. So the good news is you've got a chance that we'll let you win. And how that works is the sausage making of politics, right? But we'll let you win. But if you don't go along with what we want, with our interests, staffing commitments, VP commitments, administrative pick commitments, if you don't let the establishment run your ship very tightly, we're not going to let you in. We're going to take you out of the game one way or the other, and the results are not going to be good for you. So basically, the buzzsaw are all of these lawfare opportunities, because he's got a gauntlet of criminal investigation or criminal, charges still pending in the other ones. He's got the one about the overthrow of the election nonsense. It's in a DC jury. You could convince them. You could charge him with colluding with Bigfoot, and a DC jury would convict him on all accounts. Okay. They would do it in a heartbeat. You could say that Donald Trump is colluding against the human species by having clandestine meetings with the Bigfoot, and the DC jury pool would convict him for life imprisonment 100 times over. That's how nuts those psychopaths are in that city. So he's guaranteed on that. You got Fulton County, with their, insane, stupid thing. Again, you get the grant, that community is like 98% Democrat. You could tell them that he was colluding with flying saucers in the skies of Georgia, and therefore he deserves solitary confinement for the rest of his life, and the jury would convict. So he is guaranteed to be experiencing prison, but for winning this election, in my opinion. And he may still experience prison even if he wins. And this is about negotiation. So they're leveraging Donald and saying, hey, you play nice, we'll let you in, but you're going to do what we want you to do. That's it. And if you don't, we're going to throw you to the wolves. And it's not a pretty sight what's going to be the rest of your life with all your friends and family. Which way do you want to go? That's what the negotiation is right now. And, unfortunately, he has not indicated a desire to really be free from the uniparty. He's already said, Nikki Haley, I've got a place for her in my administration. That's his signal to the uniparty establishment. I'm willing to play with you guys. Adelson's widow has committed, $100 million to his reelection so far. $100 million, that comes with some commitments for her interests as a neocon and that nonsense part of the uniparty establishment agenda. So this is all about kind of negotiating. Okay, Mr. Big Shot, you're a big star, aren't you? Okay, you want to have access to this another shot at power? It's going to be really nice and manicured this time if we let you back in. How's that sound? I think that's the negotiation going on the behind the scenes there. From a narrative standpoint, it is more interesting. Like you said, they don't seem to be able to understand that the more they persecute him, the greater his power is. And some of them that do seem to understand it don't seem to have the ability to let off of that. They seem to want to keep pushing the gas pedal towards more persecution, even though they realize it seems to be backfiring. And I don't know. Now, some people would say it's all part of their, some kind of conspiracy that they know that this is going to make him look like a false messiah and that'll get everybody's hopes up again. And look, human beings are going to turn anybody who does anything different into a messiah. That's what they do. I mean, and that's unfortunate. That's the nature of human beings. So I don't think you have to go to such elaborate extent to create a messiah complex. The American people in general will typically elevate someone to an idol for very little reasons. And they've got plenty of reasons to idolize him because of how different he is compared to the politicians around him. Isn't it interesting that most politicians still get in trouble when they make a scandal? They get a lot of heat from their voters, more than Trump gets when he has a scandal. Scandals come and go with him, and he's still supported, right? And I think it's because most politicians are still talking with political speech, and Trump largely has found a way not to speak in a political language. And there's something powerfully different about that. And it's also because of his independent wealth and fame that he has. But well, what I'm saying is there's a lot of like people on the Republican ticket who have learned to adopt some of the externalities of Trump's presentation. They say mean words now, they say tough guy language. They promise really tough, blunt type measures, but then they get a scandal. Like I'll give you an example, Carrie Lake, right? Carrie Lake was going to be the next Donald Trump, right? She's floundering. She's losing by a lot of points in Arizona in her Senate race right now because she's tried to use that kind of Trump brand, but people smell politics language in her mouth. They smell that she's got that fear, and she uses political language to get out of things and to duck and weave and to hide and people smell that. And they smell that on a lot of these other people who try to take the Trump formula and manufacture a political style speaking gimmick off of it. I mean, even, Blake Masters, who we had on this program. And, I thought, when he was running for Senate, maybe he could do something, but he kept using political language, a political speech that seemed fake, like, well, these little canned lines and stuff. And when you speak with a canned line approach, even if you put in some naughty words and some sassy language, it doesn't matter if it's still canned. When a scandal hits you, it breaks you. You know what I mean? And that's something that none of these little fake, wannabes of Trump era really have learned that. I think even Vivek still speaks with that canned little talking point line. Well, it's funny you'll say that, but that little line, that little thing. When you do that, it's it makes you somehow very fragile to scandals piling up to you. It doesn't, whatever Trump does, he doesn't speak like that. And I think that's why scandals come and they go, and he's still there. He still gets his power base.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you can feel it. And I think things have changed where people more intuitively can feel that political BS speech that comes out. Some people that came to mind that do it kind of well, and I maybe get your thoughts on maybe some other people that are more in line with kind of MAGA, or they're not rhinos and whatnot. JD Vance, Michael Schellenberger, and Thomas Massie. What do you think of those three in regards to this, their ability to communicate genuinely without being, clunky in their political speech?
Well, JD Vance is very much like I was describing Carrie Lake and Blake Masters, that they're still using political speech, but they don't have it's not raw, it's not raw from the heart. It's still using, political speech to kind of create canned lines. And I don't think that has much fortitude, holding through, I don't see that as something that is really, tried and true, if you really think about it.
What about Michael Schellenberger?
Who's that?
He's the one that came out with the WPath files. He comes kind of more from the tech sector, Elon Musk. He was a lefty that's come out really taking, it's not even right wing or conservative, kind of anti-establishment perspective. He's not a politician though. What about Thomas Massie?
Now Massie, he is someone who he got in there early on with Ron Paul. And
Mm-hmm.
so he's not, again, he's not really like Trump, where he's got that charismatic, uh, uh, high energy vibe to him. But Massey is more like a kind of nerdy political philosopher who wants to stay away from the fires of Mordor in DC. I mean, he usually uses that language to describe
Mm-hmm.
his work in the hills of Kentucky, where he's got an off the grid house. He's got cattle that he raises the same way as Joel Salatin, regenerative agriculture. He's good friends with Joel. I met him in person
Mm-hmm.
when I went to one of Joel's Rogue Food conferences at Joel's farm, and Massey is very much a true farmer's farmer, and he's interested in a kind of populist libertarian leave me alone thing. I think he's got a great future ahead of him politically if he wants to run for Senate and maybe take Mitch McConnell's spot. Uh, I don't know, how far his more philosophical, intellectual populist approach, how far that can go for the masses. There's something about Trump that plays well as this kind of rap icon, and that when he
Mm-hmm.
gets indicted, it gets more,
Street
Hispanics and
cred.
blacks are kind of like, yeah, I can get along with this. Whereas Massey is more, he's an engineering tinkerer,
Yeah.
creating off the grid solar panels and regenerative farming. How far does that brand, play? And how far would he have to, sell himself to really get a lot of crossover energy to the normies who never vote and never pay attention to politics? And when you're talking about like a national profile like that for presidency, I don't know if Massey could do that or desires that. Um, but he's certainly extremely important. I think
What
he's
about
eclipsed
Ron
Rand
Johnson?
Paul in terms of being the biggest libertarian figure in the national scene right now. Rand has been really focused narrowly on going after the facts around Fauci's fraud and what was going on with that. Now, what'd you say?
They're having the Fauci hearing,
Yeah,
the House hearing right now. I was actually listening to it a little
yeah.
before. So, what do you think about MTG, Marjorie Taylor Greene? And
Uh,
she has this fiery political. Seems like she blurs the line. Some of it seems very Trump-esque, where she kind of means it. Other times it seems like it's just kind of mean girl,
yeah,
performative. But I think she's got a mixture of both. What do you think?
yeah. I don't. Again, I think her brand is a little bit more niche. It doesn't have as much, in my opinion, crossover appeal to the general makeup of a general audience for
Mm-hmm.
national politics. It's going to be a subsection of the Trump base that I think would be resonating with her presentation. But I don't really follow too much about her particular things. I think a lot of that stuff is, unfortunately, it's all performance art, and not in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not much. There's not much value you get out of it. I think someone like Thomas Massey understands the real components to what it takes to have a decentralized revolution in the economy. When it relates to the food system, he wants people to be able to buy and sell directly from small farmers, not just chicken, but meat, beef, and pork, and raw milk, and all dairy and stuff like that. And if that would be allowed, that would create a lot of opportunity for decentralized food distribution, which would put power back in the local situations for people, local neighborhoods, local communities, healthier foods, more nutritionally rich, nutrient dense foods. He also understands the importance of alternative energy to some degree. And those are the key components. If you can feed people independently of Caesar, and if you can power your homes independently of Caesar, and power your house independently of Caesar, that's about what you need to create a new world order of freedom. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the things that hardly anybody in politics talks about, right? And that should be all the attention for serious people right now. Should be all focused on independence and food and distribution, and independence and energy. Those
Yeah.
are the two things. Those are the foundations. You can't start with the downstream things like how our politics should look, how our architecture should look, all these downstream things. You got to get the first foundations right. And if you get the first foundations with integrity, now you've got a great starting point to do some great stuff. But until we get there, it'll be a little bit of a challenge in the meantime.
So in order to do that, and this is something I've been thinking about, like, we talk, like Democrats say we want to tax the rich, we want to increase the taxes, but to what end? What happens to this tax base, right? Think of something like food stamps. Food stamps a good idea. We want people to be fed, but the number one purchaser of Coca-Cola is the federal government through their food stamp program, right? And all of the food stamp and these food welfare programs are subsidies for big food, right? For all these processed foods and whatnot. So we give more money to subsidize, welfare programs and food stamps, things of that nature, but it just gets filtered back into big food. And then we feed people these processed foods that gets them sick. And then who comes on the back end, right? You have big pharma that is going to treat our chronic diseases with prescription medications, right? So what is something like Obamacare is a subsidy to the insurance agencies. So it filters the money from the people, from the tax base, through these unhealthy mediations of food and drugs into these big corporations who then have all of these lobbyists, right? They have more Wall Street lobbyists, more big food lobbyists, more big pharma lobbyists, way more than there are actual senators and congressmen, right? And what do they do? I was watching, actually, Jon Stewart was on with I forgot what it was, Two Bears, One Cave, Bert Kreischer and Tom Segura, and he actually had some great points. He was talking about this exact topic here, and he was saying these things that make a lot of sense, right? And that's what needs to change. So ultimately, to get to the root cause of redistributing, tax revenue to healthy, functional food and medicines and lifestyles, you got to extricate yourself from the current system of lobbying and these financial and corporate interests. So you got to attack that, right? How do you get at that kind of root cause in order to allow something like these local farming and these? Imagine if we could just move and orient our tax base and our funds for healthy, positive, items that encourage well-being in people, give them good food, local food that is good for them. Encouraging exercise, encouraging positive mental health resources to be distributed through social media, right? So you got to get at that kind of fundamental bedrock of the distribution of funds. How do you do that? That seems where you kind of get to a point where it's like, oh my God, they're so entrenched.
Yeah.
Vote somebody else in.
Yeah.
That doesn't really work. Like, there's just, if you want to talk about systemic issues, systemic racism, it's this systemic kind of communist socialism, fascism, this corporate public-private partnersps that are just infested into this country. And it seems like we got to put our hands up.
You can't do anything legislatively. Nothing. That's the thing that people have to get in their heads. Nothing is going to happen legislatively, you know, in your lifetime, probably, to do anything like roll back one program or one bit of spending. That's why you basically have to take your losses when it comes to politics and then redirect your energy towards things that can be built up, because you have to build wealth outside of dollar-based systems of wealth. You have to build wealth where it really matters, like proper use of land to create nutrient-rich soil that creates nutrient-rich products from the soil, and then being able to distribute it to your local communities in a way that gets you your return so that you can build capital and expand into the future. That's where things need to be. So it's a lot of this is what we're doing right now. What I try to do on this show is providing a kind of information clearinghouse for people to use as a kind of starting point to catalyze the revolution wherever they see fit. That's why we talk about a whole host of random things. I talk about how healing the soil, and it's not random, but it looks random to the average person on first glance. But I'm actually giving you foundation starter kit information bits to kickstart whatever you think you can do. One of the things I'm looking for still is the revolutionary paradigm shift when it comes to affordable housing. I think that's the big thing for people right now who want to be able to create a family or a foundation. is to be able to have a home that does not require obscene amounts of debt, something that you could actually, pay as you go. I mean, Henry Ford had a model back in the day where he didn't want the people to be in debt to afford one of his cars. So he had a layaway system. I think there should be housing that is so affordable that you can kind of have a layaway system to the builder, right? And pay it. And then you've paid it. Now you've got a complete house and it's going to be built, right? And or completed for you. And you don't have any debt notes carried with that. I mean, that's the real revolutionary thing, because most of our system is completely beholden to parasitical banking oligarchs who have rigged the entire system to benefit them and to make it extremely unproductive to be productive. So everything in America is gained towards unproductive paper pushers, and it needs to be reversed. These oligarchs hate real wealth innovations. And I think there's a reason why they push stupid, antiquated ideas about physics, because they go nowhere. I think it's almost like they catechize us with Marvel movies, these superhero Marvel movies about wormholes, and every one of those movies, they catechize the public about the reality of quantum entanglement and wormholes, these things that go nowhere. Multiple dimensions, multiple realities, black holes, and all these exotic things that are just BS. They're not.
It's more gaslighting. Like, that little pale blue dot Carl Sagan picture where it shows Earth from this satellite that's, super far away. And it's like, all of your problems, look where you live, and you can see is like barely a speck of dust, and it's the Earth in this big band. I'm like, this is meaningless. It's a stupid thing. I used to be excited about something like that. Oh my God, look at this vast space. It's so stupid. It's like we've made Neil deGrasse Tyson a prophet in some way. He's a charlatan. He's a joke. Like, there's no there. That's kind of the metaphysics materialist metaphysics that's dying here. And I think ultimately the systems that we're talking about, we're seeing kind of rent seeking, where people are just, looting our great country and looting our tax base and looting the people. That can't sustain itself. The population is getting sicker and sicker, so eventually something's got to give, kind of from a physics perspective of the well-being of the people. But I like this. Let's get back to the fundamental features of civilization and politics, right? Food, energy, housing, education, work, security, right? Food, energy, housing, education, work, security. Those seem to be the kind of the bedrocks of civilization, right? But that it's like, anytime we're talking about we need to redistribute or we need to change X, Y, and Z, we can't do it through legislation. There's no alternative structure yet. There's one maybe kind of being built. We can use decentralized technologies, crypto and stuff like that. But we're at a very nascent stage of that happening. But I do think it is happening. And on that note, have you heard of the hidden patents, the Hidden Patent Act of 1956? There's like 5,000 hidden patents. You really should look into it. I'll send you something. If you Google Hidden Patent Act 1956, you'll see there's like 5,000 of them. One of them came about, I think it was in the 70s. They were able to make one gallon of gas, go 200 plus miles for 1 gallon of gas. And I don't know the exact details, but Big Energy, I think it was Shell or Exxon, bought the patent, right? And then shelved it. And you multiply that by a few thousand patents. So there's a lot of, notice there's no new profound breakthrough technologies anymore, because these entrenched corporate interests, as soon as they find the patent, they'll just throw $25 million to purchase the patent and they'll shelve it. So you notice we're not having any profound technological breakthroughs outside of kind of, updated iPhone and whatnot.
That goes to one of my points I always talk about, which is that Christian incarnational progress is at odds with this kind of Gnostic regime of patents and intellectual property, right? Christian incarnational progress deals with real property, real material things that can be delineated as mine and this is yours, and the contract helps sort that out to some degree. Whereas patents is creating contracts for ideas, right? And then once you do that, you don't have anything tangible. It becomes this game where you're constantly looking to create patent warfare, just like we see with lawfare going on with Trump for political reasons. They play that game all the time to stifle innovation in the world of patents. So yes, the patents is the Gnostic of the mind, detached from reality, disembodied assault on embodied incarnational Christian engineering. And a lot
but
of
at the same,
things, Yeah,
At the
law of
same time,
attraction.
you're gonna need the patent though, right? But the patent's the blueprint of the physical structure that's going to be built, right? It's the
Well,
blueprint.
I mean, not really. The patent is a government, you go into the government to create a artificial kind of monopoly protection to then have lawsuits and fight with that over that. The
Hmm.
idea itself is not a patent. It's just the construct that we go to the government to petition them to give us some kind of time period of monopoly over this idea or some concept. That's really what's going on with the patent law. You don't really need to have patents to have innovation, but that's the system we have. So people have to kind of work within it as it is. But
Yeah,
it's where it's in my opinion, that's the place where a lot of innovation dies, right?
and
And
yeah. In
think
addition to
about it.
that, so
Think
like,
about it when it comes to medicine. Let me give you an example with the FDA. In order to get
mhm,
an FDA approval, you have to start with the foundation that we're going to look for something that can have a patent,
mhm,
because otherwise everybody and their brother can, sell and market the thing that you've gotten FDA approval for, And so the only way to recoup the $1 billion price tag it costs to get something FDA approved is to start with the foundation that what we're developing will have a patent.
mhm.
So that is not this right there shuts down the very foundation of the scientific method at the starting point for medicine.
Hmm.
Because when one is trying to develop the scientific method process of determining what product or what treatment will be best suited for solving this disease, one does not start with, well, first of all, we must pursue a patent. Once you've added that as the foundation starting point, that precludes like so many opportunities
Hmm.
that are
Yeah.
already way more effective than the things that they're constantly trying to create with new drugs, including generic drugs that are past their patent, including natural minerals, supplements, sunlight, all those different things. There's a host of drugs and a host of natural supplements, a host of minerals and other things that are completely shelved from consideration when the scientist is trying to say, well, how do I deal with cancer? How do I deal with diabetes? You start from a foundation which is already owned by the pursuit of patented products. That is not
Hmm.
a scientific method, period. Now, to try
Yeah.
to say, well, we then use scientific method principles after that is just a bastardization of the scientific process. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
a scam from the foundation, and nobody talks about that. Wouldn't it be amazing if Vivek, well, who's made a lot of money in patents and FDA type stuff,
Hmm.
would say this clearly? Then we're talking about real change in the conservative movement. If Trump would talk about this is what really needs to happen. But they're
Yeah.
still dealing with, and I don't, it's easier said than done. I understand. I don't, there's a lot going on there, but, to really be a man about these things is going to look a lot different than the slop we get from conservative and populist Inc. and left wing Inc. It's all very low resolution, that conversation that they're having, and thank God for the disaster of this last crisis that we went through, because it allowed people to start the process of considering perhaps that the NIH and the FDA are not these, but beneficent, uh, you know, godlike intellectual genius titans that have just come down from on high to deliver us these brand new ideas that would change the world and are just completely scientifically rigorously determined. No, they're a bunch of punk scoundrels, man.
Hmm.
And punk scoundrels are con artists. They know how to dress and they know how to
Hmm.
talk for their mark, and if you want to sell a mark, you got to dress the dress and talk the talk of what they've been conditioned through their whole life to find aura and respectability and credibility in. And so you put on your coat and you talk with a certain bureaucratic sterile language, and you talk about the science and I am the science, and you use all that language, and you can sell and really do a number on the people that you're trying to harm and fleece for your own benefit. And it's a gangster government. And the best way to do change is to try as best as you can to bypass that government by creating solutions and information distribution of ideas that can help people solve problems where they need them to be solved. I mean, I'll give you an example. Georgi Dinkov, who I've had on this program, and I'm giving him a shout out. He hasn't been on my show in a while, but I understand he told me that he's been working with doing some mice studies demonstrating using a type of aspirin, which is very dirt cheap. And I think vitamin B1, which is thiamine, and I believe vitamin B3. And he's using those as a therapy to treat the worst types of most lethal cancers in rats. And he's finding that those three things alone eliminate the cancers and allow the rats or mice to have a flourishing life. Now, he did this own trial on his own dime, and there needs to be a lot of repetition of that. But, the reason why Harvard doesn't look at that, oh, let's do this tomorrow, because their whole system, including the grants that they have at their departments, the way in which they get cash flow coming, this money laundering scheme is not designed. Oh my God, that works. Let's just try it. They're not doing that. It's got to be something that is a patented new product. And the thing about these mRNA products is that's something you can keep doing every year or every 6 months in perpetuity. That is kind of the next level of this patent grift. That is kind of more lucrative for their model than the traditional therapeutic, getting a therapeutic drug approved,
Yeah, they're doing the opposite. So if Harvard, it's all about funding and where the funding comes from. So if something is going to come and disrupt, one of the main industries that they're funding, they're going to put a kibosh on it. They're going to buy the patent, they're going to buy the technology, and going to put it on the shelf.
Run smear pieces on it. Yeah, go on CBS.
This is a whack job. You're going to cure cancer, X, Y, and Z, and then
using vitamins and aspirin. This is crazy. If you look, there's a lot of literature in their own established medical journals showing there's an anti-cancer effect with aspirin. But it's kind of always kind of shuffled to the side. Well, this may or may not have effect. Don't worry. Don't talk to your doctor. Talk to your doctor. Talk to your drug dealer. Talk to your drug dealer. Talk to your drug dealer. He knows what he's supposed to be pushing. And that's the narrative. Go back to your drug dealer. He's got the license. He's got the monopoly on all the patented drugs, So he alone can dole you out what is that which is supposed to be the most efficacious thing for you. In reality, this is just the sick, toxic effects of mimetic groupthink using the power of coercion. And that's the thing, man. All of this is based on the state's presumption of the monopoly right of coercion. Without that coercive element, a lot of this groupthink does not stay as entrenched as long as it does. If we had more of a free market of scientific information, right, then things would go to the truth. Because there would be somebody who would have a monetary incentive to finance the most amazing top-of-the-line studies using aspirin and vitamin and B1 and B3 or whatever it is that Georgi Dinkov is exploring, and scale those double-blind studies up all over the place for cancer patients and decisively show that something that costs pennies could take on this $100 billion a year giant behemoth. But there's not enough incentive for that. We need so-called, if Elon Musk took an act of self-giving and risk on the part of going against the groupthink narrative and buying X and allowing people to say allegedly whatever they want to some extent, we need that kind of move in the world of medical information, medical freedom, that generic drugs and vitamins could be alleviating these serious chronic diseases would do wonders for the public's ability to reclaim their health, to reclaim their pocketbook, to reclaim their hope, to reclaim their joy, and also to lose a little bit of their faith, their blind faith in the oligarchs and their state centers of their state institutions of power, right? Because if you can show the public that just one of their behemoths, say cancer, is decisively defeated by X, Y, and Z, that is the little stone in the Goliath that takes the whole thing down. Because if you show the public that can be decisively defeated using a paradigm completely outside of what the established government allied corporations and institutions and universities say, and then it stands to follow, well, what else is also able to be developed outside of their system for diabetes, for Alzheimer's, for psoriasis, for mental health problems. How many people who are the most sycophantically supportive of the establishment have mental health problems? They've weaponized the very thing that they have given as an affliction to their poor nutritional advice. People are nutritionally deficient. They're poisoned by toxic levels of linoleic acid, which comes from the seed oils and the rancid fish oils. And they're in a state of complete mental health upside down. And then the politicians use that and predate on these people, manipulating them with these horrible narratives that draw these mentally ill people together in a desperate plea for salvation. It's really sick. So if you can heal mental health issues in something like cancer or diabetes using things that don't cost an arm and a leg, and you can demonstrate that to the public, if Elon or other people can do a move like that for a couple diseases, one disease like cancer, it will be a huge revolutionary moment for people's ability to lose sight of putting their faith in the state and its oligarchic narratives.
I think Mark Cuban, are you familiar with what he's done recently with prescription medications? He's done something like he took these medications that were, increased 5, 6, 10, 20 fold, right? And he just purchased the medication kind of wholesale, and he's selling it for a marginal increase in terms of cost. And it's worked that for medications for diabetes and a lot of these chronic diseases and these chronic issues. So something like that, I think, is happening. And I think,
he's not, he's still playing within their framework.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because he's still he's probably, when you say diabetes, he's probably talking about like insulin and all these other things, which does not treat the thing holistically, but rather is just masking the symptom of the disease. What I'm talking about is decisively healing these diseases at their root.
Yeah.
Which Mark is not, I know Mark is not going to go outside of the establishment and ruffle feathers by trying to actually heal people systemically. That's not something he would do.
So the good news is that there is information out there how to heal yourself of chronic disease, how to heal yourself from the mRNA injections. The thing is, you need to do your own research. And what have they demonized, in the last few years? Don't do your own research. Jimmy Dore has a bit. He says, do my own research. It's called reading. It's called reading. And there are ways, there's a lot of information out there. So I think you're right. It's about this kind of this enchantment that we're under for the system, and that everything that's a solution or potential solution or even a healing is ridiculed. But you can do it yourself. You don't need anything else other than an intention and ability to discern information to heal yourself from your particular ailment that you have or your family has. That's a good thing. That's positive news. But you have to do it. You have to take an interest in it, and you have to do it. And there's information out there. I mean, the cancer treating effects of ivermectin are phenomenal. The antiviral effects of being sufficient in vitamin D are phenomenal, right? Changing your sleeping habits, what you eat, these little lifestyle changes go a long way in mental health and chronic diseases or whatnot, because everybody is subject to this,
What needs to happen, in my opinion, is that more of all these little niche areas of this one uses that protocol and this one uses that. All of these ideas need to be intertwined together. They need to have entanglement. These ideas need to mix, right? Because we need to be able to sort out, the mechanisms by which these various approaches outside of the mainstream are doing what they're doing, so that we can then evaluate which ones are the best protocols and how they're working, and how, the overlapping structures and functions of these various protocols, how they're, like, someone says vitamin C for this disease, somebody says these vitamin B and vitamin B1, B3, somebody says aspirin, somebody says graviola, somebody says juicing, somebody says this, that, somebody says therapeutic ketosis. There's all these people doing all this stuff. And I think that's part of the problem of going somewhere with this, right? Is that it's all noise, right? And then when someone's faced with the serious diagnosis, the fear sets in, and you become overwhelmed by, well, there's this paradigm and that paradigm. This one says starve this. And I'm trying to use these words in a vague way because I know they are very censorious about these things. But, they say starve this growth using therapeutic ketosis. And then the other one says, no, you need to be doing Gerson's therapy, lots of juicing. And we need to be able to have these comparative analysis of, people who have opposing views in these alternative worlds. To that information needs to be gathered together and sorted out to figure out what's doing what, and why does this method shrink tumor and this one does that and this one does that, and how they're doing it, so that we can then figure out. This is what a market does. It's just sorting the information to find out what is the most efficacious thing across the board for all of these types of diseases at the cheapest price, reliably so, you know what I mean? And which is the one that can be scaled, right?
Yeah.
And because there's a whole host of things, you can talk about reishi mushroom, chaga mushroom, you talk about teas, you could talk about different herbal teas that people have used for lots of times, a whole host of different things, and some people have talked about, I've had Michael Lasanti on talking about common generic antibiotics like doxycycline and azithromycin for dealing with cancer. And that needs to be further researched. Someone needs to compile all this data together and try to sort out. This is what I'm trying to suggest is this is the type of stuff that so-called conservatives or anti-establishment people should be organizing and developing, these information clearinghouses, allowing these things to be. That's one of the things, like, for example, I do a lot in the world of the nutrition world. I bring together some of the best keto and paleo doctors and advocates. And then I have people who are very pro sugar and pro carbohydrate, like the Ray Peat people. And I bring some of them onto my show, and I bring this onto my show. Sometimes I let them interact in a discussion or debate. And I want people to kind of sift through this information together with me in real time and figure out, why are they, these using these data points to say this is using this data points. We've got to be, it's not postmodern. There's got to be an answer here that helps us understand this stuff. This is the real work that needs to be done. This is what education is for, and it's not being done in academia. So it has to be done outside of it.
Yeah, no, I think you're doing what needs to be done. I think when you think about it at scale, whenever there's a conglomeration of information, kind of like an Angie's List or Craigslist, Inc. comes in, big Inc. Like they come in and will purchase it. They'll just throw a lot of money at it and they'll disband it or they'll shelve it. So we got to keep doing what we're doing with the small networks and kind of building from there. That's why I appreciate the work that you do. And that kind of we do on here is making this information available and giving people at least a start so they can kind of do their own research and heal themselves from their particular ailment. I think there's nothing more important than that.
Yeah. And then also, like you were talking about earlier, when it comes to, healing the soil, I think that's something that a lot of people can do, is learning how to get the right nutrient ratios in their actual soil, getting a soil test done in your backyard or your field or whatever you've got. And finding a way to assess where you're nutritionally deficient, finding the best organic nutrition amendments or fertilizers to use or sprays to get your garden or your backyard farming operation in better order. Because when you get food that is nutritionally rich, because your soil is nutritionally rich, now you're actually solving a lot of those health problems proactively for the next generation. What we want, if we're successful, is that the next generation, the children who are little kids now, that they can grow up with less health problems starting off and for the rest of their life than generations before them. That's the great revolutionary change that we can see. And wouldn't that be a beautiful thing if we see the ones who are little kids now, when they're in their 20s and 30s, they're dropping all of those health trends that are going horrific, from baby boomer to Gen X to, millennial and Gen Z. The trends of all these health problems keep skyrocketing up and up and up, earlier and earlier and earlier, And if we can see that start to drop right back in reverse in the next generation, Generation Alpha, that's a sign that we've done our job again as Christians. Christians care about reality. And they're not stuck in their little prayer closets, afraid to do the right thing for their neighbor. Okay. You pray to get powered up so you can go and be a good neighbor, right? That's the point. It's to send you out. It's to send you out in the Great Commission. And that includes making a difference to the point where you can create a beautiful wonder, like a great reversal of health trends in one generation. We can do it, but it takes
Yeah.
hard work now, and it's not very hard. You can call my friend Dana Venrick and get your soil tested right now and find out what you're nutritionally deficient in. And you can find out in your own backyard, because it doesn't take a lot of space to grow a lot of good food,
Mm-hmm.
and then when you get that soil test, you'll know, okay, I'm deficient here. I need more of this. I need more of that. Get your good quality soil solutions, start working it into the soil. And the point is, good fertilizer is designed so that you don't have to keep fertilizing so much. The idea is less is more, that once you create the nice, healthy microbiome in the soil, just like your gut, you got a good, healthy microbiome in your body, it's going to absorb the nutrition you need more effectively and reduce the toxins in your
Mm-hmm.
body, which is
Yeah.
going to increase your sense of euphoria, which is going to make you a really wonderful, contagiously happy person to be around. And at the same time, you're going to be able to get less you're going to be able to have more nutrition with less expenditure to your pocketbook. So it's a win-win all the way around. I
Yeah.
used to be kind of like keto carnivore only, and I've learned to be more open-minded and to recalibrate carbohydrates into a proper role for society. I think especially children who have not been as metabolically impaired from decades of eating seed oils have the opportunity to have healthy foods that include healthy carbohydrates at an early age to give them a robust starting point. And the first step is to be able to get if you want to grow a lot of your own stuff, to get your soil in the right direction. Get your soil in the right direction, then your food is going to have all the nutritional minerals and vitamins that you need, so that when you're eating your carrots, you don't want to raise garbage carrots and then you're eating garbage carrots and you feel like it's cute because you homesteaded,
Mm-hmm.
but your carrots, they're like water. There's nothing in them. Come on. We want to have lots of good vitamins in those things. It's just like your oranges. If you're growing you got 10 orange trees in your backyard in Florida, but they're so sick and malnourished, they don't have any good nutrition. So you're just drinking garbage tasting. It tastes like garbage and it has such little vitamins in it. So you want to get your vitamins up so that you can squeeze your oranges and have delicious orange juice that your kids need. It's going to help their thyroid be happy. It's going to help them feel great. It's going to give them a positive attitude, sustained energy throughout the day. Give them a cup of milk. Maybe you can't raise all your cows. You got Farmer Joe's got cows. You've got oranges. You give them a exchange of whatever he agrees to. Hey, you give me X amount of your oranges and I'll give you X amount of my milk. How about that? Sounds good. So now you've got oranges and milk. That's the first starting point of a good breakfast, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. 100%. And then, you heal yourself and people will see it. And then you share what you did with others close to you. And then you scale it from there, from the ground up. That's kind of where we're at. And I think that, we're kind of doing it. Keep sharing information, man. I think that's what A Neighbor's Choice is doing. I think you have great people on and you do great stuff, man. So let's keep it up, man. And I'll join you. Be an army of well-being,
Yeah. I
Yeah.
appreciate you too, James. And I love what you do. You introduce high concept philosophy and theology and mystical understanding. You make it approachable for every person, which is a great task and a great skill. Very few people have that ability. You're almost like a lawyer because you're taking high concept, just like a law, right? And then you make it accessible for the jury. That's an incredible skill to have. And
It's
that's
nutrition for the soul.
Yeah.
Nutrition for the soul. We
That's
need
what the
nutrition
Holy
for the
Spirit
body
is, man. Yeah.
and nutrition from the soul, both of it. So yeah. Cool, man.
Very good. Thanks, James. I appreciate it.
Yeah, dude. Appreciate you. Till next time.
Take care.
God bless.
Bye-bye.